Hunter S. Thompson is the author of the Rum Diary. He was born in Louisville, Kentucky in July 18, 1937. He often found himself having trouble with the law when he was young. One time he was seen in a car with a robber, and for that he spent some time in jail. He discovered his passion for writing when he was in the Air Force. He was an author and a journalist, and he hoped to find work at San Juan, which is how he found the inspiration to write the Rum Diary. And he also worked at the National Observer in South America from 1962 to 1963.
All the characters have in common pretty much two things. They're pretty much always depressed because of what they're living in Puerto Rico, about the racism that they face because they're gringos. And Puerto Ricans pretty much don't like gringos. Basically, it's the vice versa of Puerto Rican going to New York. He's going to be call out names, etc. But in this case, it's a gringos coming to Puerto Rico to start a new life, and they pretty much it doesn't go well because they're treated badly. The second thing that they have in common is they always drink, like pretty much in every single page they're drinking. Why? Because this is their only way to get out of their reality, to experiment happiness, because pretty much they're not always happy. They're always depressed about their work and how people treat them. So, our first and main character is Paul Kemp. Paul Kemp is a 30-year-old journalist that moved from St. Louis to Puerto Rico to work at the Daily News after quitting his job at New York. He quit his job at New York because he said that he needed a fresh life, that he didn't want to be contained in that same old routine in New York. He said that pretty much he was bored because everyone told him that he was a failure, that he never see things go through. He always left things like in the middle. And he left his family because of these reasons. He left his homeland to work in Puerto Rico. When he starts working in Puerto Rico, all the things that he thought that were going to be a little bit better are probably worse, because he's constantly seeing this violence that's going on in Puerto Rico, that the economic system in Puerto Rico is not good. The workplace, which is the Daily News, is not what he expected. It's a little bit not as comfortable as in New York. Next off, we have Bob Sala. Bob Sala is also known as Richard Sala. He's the staff photographer of the Daily News and is approximately 30 years old, as said by Paul Kemp. Bob Sala is pretty much the definition of a miserable man, because he hates Puerto Rico to the extent of people like to commit suicide just because he hates Puerto Rico, the people, but he also doesn't have the money to move out of Puerto Rico. Says that he's scared because he doesn't know when he might get killed by the mobs in Puerto Rico. Jamon. He's about 24 years old, and in my opinion, he can be the worst character in this novel because he's always arrogant. He mistreats pretty much everyone badly. Like, he doesn't care about anybody's feelings. He's also Shauna's boyfriend. Their relationship is an abusive relationship because she has to do whatever Jaimon says. He's a reporter at the Daily News. As I already said, he's a troublemaker. He's always willing up to a fight. Next off, we have Ed Lutterman. Ed Lutterman is an ex-communist. He's also the founder of the Daily News because he came from Florida to San Juan to start the Daily News because he thought that Puerto Rico needed to know more about the United States apart from having the New York Times already there. So he decided to establish the Daily News because he thought everything was going to go in his favor. Be fine, but sadly that wasn't the case. Daily News, after 3 years, was already in bankruptcy. It was targeted a lot by mobs. He's always enraged. He's always fighting with his staff because he does have an incompetent staff. The whole staff, which is Bob Sala, Jaymon, Paul Kemp, Moberg, are always drunk. Well, except Paul Kemp. Paul Kemp is pretty much the nice guy. Sheldon is pretty much this perfect girl in Paul Kemp's eyes. Their first encounter was in Paul Kemp's flight, and she is a blonde girl, a really pretty skinned girl, and she's also from the United States. She is Jamon's girlfriend. She's always positive. She's always a dynamic character, like she does whatever she pleases, even though Jamon doesn't allow her to act freely. But apart from that, that doesn't stop her from doing whatever she wants. She's always like a good person. She always tries to help people, even though her life is a mess, especially with Jamin. Morberg is a 33 years old person that also works in the Daily News. In the story, they don't know a lot about Morberg because he's always drunk. He's like the drunkest person in probably the whole novel and probably in Puerto Rico at that time because he was always drinking. Like, no excuse. Like, his life was about going to sleep, drink, and so on. He doesn't do his job. He from his life he was always quitting jobs and getting new jobs until he got fired, which is crazy because he didn't have any sense of responsibility at all in the Daily News. This is why Ed Letterman was really upset and mad at him because he didn't care about anything. He got late to work a lot of times. He was drinking at work. Paul Kemp, Bob Sala, J-Man, Ed Letterman, Shelnut, and Moberg. These characters fuse with each other because since they're depressed and everything, they kind of support each other.
The novel is based on the 1950s, where it has a variety of different places like New York, it has Puerto Rico. The main settings of the whole novel, it was always on the Daily News where the characters worked, and the place where they always have been drinking, eating like every day. Called Al's Backyard, Plaza Colon, where the main character first went when he arrived to Puerto Rico. Different street names that are in San Juan, Concha, Caribe Casino, where the characters were playing in the casino and they said that it was outrageous and how expensive it were to be in that type of casino. It has Gimen's beach house. It says about Condado, Sala's apartment, Aldo, Loiza, San Juan. The setting of being in jail. It has the courthouse on where the main character has been sent to jail for not paying something at a place. Yeah, I guess where it was like an underground party.
Plot of the Rum Diary is as follows. Paul Kemp, a journalist from New York, seeks adventure, so he wants to go to someplace new in hopes of finding something better, so he goes to Puerto Rico. He's drunk on the plane when he sees a girl that he likes, so he tries to reserve a seat, but an old man takes it and won't leave, so they fight, and the girl doesn't sit by him, and he doesn't see her again for now. When he goes to Puerto Rico, he decides to go to the Daily News where he works. There he meets Sala, Jiman, and Sanderson, his most important friends there. And he finds out the girl he saw, that which is Chanel, on the plane, is actually Jiman's girlfriend. And even though he sees Jiman treat her badly, hitting her, and even them having sex, he still is head over heels for her. He wants her. After a while, them working there, Jiman brings a 26-page series to the boss, which is Lauderman, which he didn't accept because he wanted a short story, so he fires him. After that, they decide to go to a bar in Fajardo, Casa. And Jiman has no money, and he's drunk, and he doesn't want the others to pay for him. So he's like, "I'll pay." He tells the worker on the business on the bar, "I'm gonna pay for it." But he just gets mad and leaves. They call the cops. They follow them. They beat them up, and they're in jail for not paying for their food and their drinks. And once in jail, they are set on bail by Sanderson, which is a public relations dude. But in exchange, Kemp has to do some work for one of Sanderson's clients. So he has to go to Vieques to write an article on a new hotel that one of Sanderson's clients is building. After that, he said he was going to meet Chanel and Jimon on St. Thomas. They go to the carnival, have fun, but Chanel gets drunk, and when she's dancing, a dude takes advantage of her and takes her away and basically kidnaps her. And Kemp and Jimon don't know where she's at. After some days, she appears by Kemp's apartment all dirty, not Jimon. How it ends, you just have to see. The climax is when the dude takes Chanel away, and of course, the turning point is when she appears on Kemp's apartment instead of Jimon. The point of view is first person, is told by Kemp's perspective. There are three types of conflict. There's man versus man. We see this when Jimon is fighting against a mob of 20 guys with a picket fence. And we also see this when the cops and the locals are fighting with Camp Jimon and Sala, and even in St. Thomas when the locals are fighting with Jimon because he wants to find Chanel, his girl, back. Manfred himself, Camp doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't know if he wants to leave Puerto Rico someplace else because the job is gonna close low on money. He doesn't know if he should sue Chanel later in his life or just forget about her. And there's also man versus environment because the jail is a bad place, all crowded, the floor is dirty. The mood and the tone is formal and serious.
When we read this novel, we realize that there are a lot of themes going on in this story, but I'll be presenting the ones that I think that are basically the most important ones or the most mentioned ones. The first theme presented in this novel is love and jealousy. Paul Kemp is constantly saying that he is really jealous of Yemen because of how he lives his life. On one specific situation in the story, he even said to himself, I envied Yemen and even felt sorry for myself at the same time, because I had never seen him in a moment that made all my happiness seem dull. Not only was he jealous of Yemen's lifestyle, he was also jealous because he had Chanel, this beautiful girl which Paul felt love and lust for. Another theme presented in this novel is ambition and immigration. We can observe ambition in the way that Paul wanted everything upgraded. His job, his car, and even his apartment. He always talked about these things with his partner Bob Sala. And one time when they were talking about how Paul needed a car for himself, Sala pointed out that he didn't need a car, he wanted a car. People back then were trying to achieve a better lifestyle, so an option people had was to move from the island and go to the United States. Male chauvinism is shown in the way that Yemen treats Chanel. The first time everyone realized that this was happening was the time they were all drinking in Yemen's house and Chanel started joking around. Yemen didn't like her attitude like that, so he just slapped her in the cheek as if it was normal. It says, his arm shot so quickly that I barely saw the movement. There was the sound of a smack as the back of his hand hit her cheek. It was almost a casual gesture. No anger, no effort, and by the time I realized that what happened, he was leaning back in his chair again, watching passively as she staggered back a few feet and burst into tears. Alcoholism was also a big problem in this story. Every food was taken with rum. At festivals, people drank as if they didn't care about anything. There was this one time that Yemen, Chanel, and Paul Kemp were just hanging out at a festival and people just started robbing liquor from a liquor store. And Paul Kemp just explained in the novel. That liquor store was nothing but a shell. Room with broken windows in the front. People kept running in and out of it, grabbing stray bottles and drinking as fast as they could before somebody else drank them away. Empty bottles were tossed casually into the street, making it a sea of broken glass studded with thousands of beer cans. That is a perfect example of how alcoholism just took over everyone in the story and made them just want liquor with everything.
In this case, we have allusions here. As in, she puts on a show for the natives. They love her. The natives are Puerto Rican. We, the people. We have Machete. Here's another one. Drunk, arrogant Yankees. In the novel, we have a lot of flashbacks, and I'm just going to tell you two. This is what I told myself in those hot afternoons in San Juan when I was 30. It's recalling something that happened a long time ago. The sun didn't bother me here. It seemed to belong with the clay courts to get in and sat in the white balls, zipping back and forth. I remember the tennis courts and long gone days full of sun and gin and people I could never see again because we could no longer talk to each other without sounding dull and disappointed. I sat there in the grandstand, hearing the swack of four balls and knowing who was playing and cared. Foreshadowing. We have a lot of foreshadowing. One of these days, the silly arrogance of yours is going to cost you a lot of money. I will get my expense check next week and will pay her then. Next week, something that's not happened before. It's more like a future thing. This screwed up my plan to get a car. I was going to borrow money from Lorman and pay it back out of my salary at 10 or 15 a week. Next step, irony. Bringing a little green check that say $11.50. He wants his money. Now, they are like, I'm not gonna pay that. No, we'll figure out later that our stay in the cell costs more than $11.50. It actually costs them $15 or something like that. The thing is that they were fighting because they're not gonna pay $11.50. They went out, they ran away, the police came, it was a total mess, and then they ended up in jail, and they wasted more money than that. They wouldn't have been there the first time. And it's funny because they say it out loud. Nothing happens until somebody sells something. I found the dealers outside. Get this one ready to go, I say, pointing to the convertible. I will give you $400 for it at noon. He shook his head. $500, he said, lifting the sign in the windshield. Nonsense, I replied. You know the rules. Nothing happens until somebody sells something. He looked surprised, but the slogan had registered symbolism. The first one is the word balls. The word balls. Yemen says it a lot. It's symbolic because he didn't mention that word at the beginning. He started using it as a way of saying that something was wrong or that it was a lie or trying to manipulate someone. We're talking about the Rum Diary, so I think that's very self-explanatory. Rum, they use it as Puerto Ricans use it. Alt. Alt is a restaurant and where they spend the rest of the novel. And every time they go to Alt, something happened.
Your love has given me wings. Penso che io sogno così non ritorni